Hey, welcome to Black People Die by Suicide 2, our new set. You've probably noticed that we've had some changes with our set over, the past few months and throughout the episodes, but this is our new home, our new setup, the new aesthetic, as the kids say. So we just wanted to film this and let you all know that, the set's going to be consistent. We were just kind of playing around to see what we liked, and this is what we got.
Yeah, I know. And for me as a person, as a marketing, communications, branding, that's my thing. I was like, Lord, I know what those people probably like. What is black? Is white?
It's green,
Is
it's grass.
green? What is grass? What is going on, y'all? But no, we really did like listen to your concerns because there were a few DMs that came in that people asked about and just offering feedback on how we can improve the podcast. So just know that we're always open for feedback. So like anything, you can send us a DM or you can send an email to info@blackpeoplediebysuicide2.org. We always want to improve the podcast, and so we're happy that this is our new home. We think it looks great. Shout out to Digital Empath because they're doing an awesome job. So we are we're very excited. So we just ask that y'all bear with us. The one of the things that I've learned from this process is being open, because I initially remember when we first started the podcast, Leon would ask questions like, "Do you want this? Do you want that?" I don't know, Leon. And so one of the things that I learned is that to start something, if you have something that you want to do, just start it. It does not have to be perfect, and you don't have to have it all figured out. There are so many things that you will learn along the way. And there are, as we've been recording and having guests and doing all of the everything related to the podcast, I've been learning like, okay, this is what I like, this is what I don't like, this is what I want to improve. So that is something that this process have also taught me, because I can tend to be a bit of a perfectionist. Jordan knows, she works with me. So we hope that you all enjoy the set. So before we will begin to have our first episode that you will see with this wonderful set, will be with the amazing Dr. Rita Walker. She will kick off. So, but for now, we have some episodes that were pre-recorded. So I'm just letting y'all know, when y'all see this, we putting this out now for y'all so we can address the changes
Right,
in the set.
right.
But y'all gonna get some white background and some grass. And then once the grass is over, then you gonna get this set.
Yes, we again, as T-Kea said, we're so open to feedback. Y'all, I'm gonna try to talk louder, Lord. My mom calls me mouse mouth. She say I talk like wee, 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 wee. So I'm gonna try to do better and project if you couldn't hear me. But yeah, so this is the new set. I hope you like the way it looks. I think it looks beautiful. It's aesthetically pleasing. So
Yes. So thank you all for bearing with us. Thank you so much for supporting us. We are so grateful. We ask that you continue to support us. Our goal for 2024 is to grow our YouTube channel. It's YouTube is a beast, but we are determined to make sure that our channel continues to grow so that we can get this content out and help change the world. So thank you so much for supporting us, you all.
The information presented in this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not meant to be a substitute for clinical mental health treatment. If you or someone you know is experiencing a mental health crisis, please dial 988 or head to your nearest emergency room.
Welcome to the Black People Die by Suicide 2 podcast, where we discuss all things mental health with an emphasis on suicide prevention. I'm your co-host, T-Kea.
and I'm your co-host Jordan.
So, y'all know what happens. If you've been watching or listening to the podcast, you know we start off with our wellness check with every episode. So if you're new here, this is how we encourage each other to get in touch with our feelings and our emotions so that it can really help us move forward. And so I guess I'll start in and just see how Georgizi, how you doing, girl?
You know what? I'm feeling grateful today, having an opportunity to come in. We've been having some really, really good interviews, and it makes me excited that people really want to like take part
Mm-hmm.
in our organization and our mission.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really excited that people are really willing to talk about the topic of suicide.
Mm-hmm.
It's so taboo, and I feel like, as African Americans, we definitely don't talk about mental health enough, nonetheless suicide. And I'm so glad that we're like continually getting this positive response.
Yeah, especially because it's suicide specifically.
Right,
So
right.
that's why I was like, because people talking, they like, oh, mental health,
Mm-hmm.
Wellness Wednesday, Self Care Sunday. That's like the glitzy, pretty stuff about mental health,
Right,
but not
right, right.
like we get into the deep
The
stuff.
nitty gritty.
Right. And I don't know if y'all picked up on that with Jordan. So Jordan said our organization. So if you haven't been on social media or you've been living under a rock, Jordan and we have actually, because of the support of you all, the DMs, the emails, it's been overwhelming in a good way. We had a conversation and thought it was best that we would actually have the podcast as an extension of our new nonprofit, which is Black People Die by Suicide Too. And so we will be hosting events on suicide prevention, also trainings, an array of other things that Jordan and I are really cooking up. But I'm so grateful that we actually decided to make this transition. And now that I like to say that we are not just a podcast, we're not just even now a mental health or suicide prevention organization. I feel like we're starting a movement
Yes, I really feel like this is going to bring the topic of suicide to the forefront
for Black
for
people.
Black people for sure. I'm excited about
Yeah.
that. How are you feeling?
How am I feeling? I'm just going to use some of your energy. I am actually, I'm feeling, I would say grateful as well. I think because never in my wildest imagination, this was not something we planned to
No.
kind of transition to a nonprofit, or really the podcast was just something I came to Jordan with, and Jordan was like, "Oh, I'll just be a regular guest." I'm like, "No, that's not what I'm proposing. I'm proposing a co-host." So, just to I think I'm grateful because of the response, but also because I feel like I get to do it like with my ride or die, to be able to have someone that Jordan and I have a very unique bond because we met in the hospital,
Yes.
and it was during one of our darkest moments. And we both were there for suicidal thoughts at the time. So to be able to see how our friendship has transpired into co-founding an organization, it does make me grateful. And I would put a plug in that stepping outside of your comfort zone can really do wonders,
Right.
whether it's personally or professionally. If I would have never slid my number to Jordan before she left before me, she left to the hospital before me. If I would have never slid my number to her, I would have missed out on a great friend. So I feel like from that, and then even from the professional standpoint in terms of actually having this as a labor of love. So I would say I'm definitely grateful, but I'm also hopeful and excited.
Same.
Yes.
Yes.
So we have a guest in the studio.
Yes, we do.
So, are you introducing her or am I supposed to introduce her? I think this is me. Y'all know Jordan's usually doing the intro. I'm trying to get my life together. So, our wonderful guest that we have today is Miss Iysha Perkins, who's the founder of The Unstable One. So, you're actually getting ready to meet her. But before we actually dive into the interview, we have to check in with Iysha to see, girl, how you doing? And y'all see she got our shirt on?
Yeah.
Yes, Leon, the claps. Let's go.
Hey, hey, hey.
How are you doing?
I am doing good. It was actually I'm sitting here and I'm listening to you guys' story, and I'm just like, it's amazing to see how two people came together from a source of pain. Like, and that's actually a beautiful thing because most of the time, most people feel alone and going through that pain, and you guys were able to make a connection out of that. So I was just sitting here like, wow, I feel grateful to know and to keep meeting people who show me that I wasn't alone or that I'm still not alone or anything like that. So I'm really grateful. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here. I'm grateful to be able to tell people a little bit more about the unstable one and my perspective on mental health. So, yeah, I'm excited. I'm grateful. All of the above.
All right. Yes, we are excited to have you. So, for today's topic, we're going to be talking about mental health from a different perspective. We'll say like an unconventional way, so to speak. Particularly around reframing the way we think about like our trauma and our dark experiences, and the idea of instability. So Aisha is the unstable one. I love that branding, by the way. And she's here to talk about her experience with mental health and how she was able to kind of reframe the ups and downs of her life. And Aisha, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. So I am born and raised in Washington, D.C. I'm the oldest of 12 siblings. So I came from a big family. I have eight siblings on my dad's side, five on my mom's side. Um, Growing up, I was always an overachiever for other reasons we can get to, but I always felt that I had to do right. I had to excel. I had to make good grades. I had to do XYZ. So I feel as though when I was growing up, everything was good grades and make good grades in school. So I went to high school. I graduated like one of the top of the class. I graduated, went to Hampton,
We
left
gonna talk
Hampton.
about that.
Oh, don't start. I think I know where this is going. And then I came home and went to Trinity to get my master's. So through my personal experience with mental health and the fact that I tried to sweep it under the rug for so long, I was embarrassed about it for myself. I was embarrassed that I dealt with a parent growing up who suffered from mental health like severely. So as I got older, and guys, believe it or not, it's honestly once I got into my 30s, it's something about those 30s where you just stop caring. I don't know if that was my experience, but as I got into my 30s, I started feeling like I can't keep worrying about what people think.
Mm.
I have to start telling my story. I know somebody out here somewhere is going to be able to say, I can relate to that. Or, wow, like I never thought I would hear somebody say that out loud, that sort of thing. And so that's where the birth of the unstable one came from. I said, I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to tell my story. I'm going to be blunt. I'm going to be transparent. But I'm also, it's not just me getting up here spilling my tea or my personal business. Is I am going to show you how I had to recognize the traumas and the source of the pain. I had to recognize when, am I allowed to cuss? If I was a shit show, can I say that?
Shit show. I don't know if shit show is
But,
the bad, but
okay.
maybe just no F bombs.
No F bombs, but I was like, that's about to fly out my mouth. Let me ask first. But no, like I was just all over the place. Let me just say that. And so I said, what steps did I have to take personally to recognize what I was feeling? Where did it come from? How did it start? And that's not easy. That's not something you're going to do overnight. It takes a while to connect those dots. And then I had to work on rejecting the limits and beliefs. I realized that I talk so negatively to myself.
Mm.
And I was telling myself so many crazy assumptions that I knew I was right. That's what I was telling myself. In my bubble and in my mind, this stuff is the truth and it's real. And I realized the more I was trapped into my head, the more secluded into myself I became, the more I isolated myself away from people. And then I kind of created this anxiety within myself where it's like now I think I have social anxiety. I'm so used to being in my bubble and in my head and in my thoughts. Now that it's time for me to try to get out of this bubble, I am scared. Like it's almost like coming home from prison and not knowing how to acclimate to society. Like I was terrified. So the unstable one was my way of breaking free of that. Let me reject the limits and beliefs. And then I create courses where it's like not just about like physical trauma. It's like, promiscuity. Where did that come from? If you were growing up and you were sleeping around and things like that, there's a source of pain from that. If you don't love yourself, if you're feeling insecure, what happened that made you feel as though you were no longer worthy? or like you are no longer deserving of love or respect, whatever the case may be. So, just a little bit of background how that came about. And then I said, I'm going to help show people how to reframe that. If you are willing to accept what you've been through, face it, find out the source of it, dig so deep, like pencil, paper, I'm going to write this down, I'm going to become a student of myself. You'll eventually be able to take that and reframe it into something positive because it won't be like this chip on your shoulder anymore. It'll be something you can accept, you can manage it, you can embrace it and say, how do I turn this negative into a positive? Because two negatives equal a positive and a negative equal a positive. Like, so I think that might want to check that one. But like,
I think you're right.
It's okay. Math
like,
doesn't really count.
oh
We
man,
get the point. We peep the point. We get the
it's like I'm about to
point.
check that one. But to just reframe that so that you can become more of like your true authentic self, like all of it as a whole. So
Yeah, I heard you say that you had a parent that dealt with mental health issues. So was mental health something that your family talked about while
n-
you were growing up? Okay.
not at all. I didn't even know about the term mental health until I got in like college. I knew that something was going on with my mom. Like I knew from, she would lock herself in her room for days or weeks at a time. She would cry a lot. I realized when I was younger, out of her five, I'm the oldest. Like I'm cooking, I'm cleaning at like 11, 12 years old. I noticed that she wasn't going to work anymore. Lights were getting cut off, they would get cut back on, and I tell people once I got over the embarrassment of it, I'm like, when I was in high school, a lot of people didn't notice, but I was washing my clothes in pots and pans, in the stove. We're eating on an electric pallet because my mom was so depressed she couldn't go to work. So I don't know how we made it without food in the house or anything like that, but I remember like our laundromat was that bathtub. You're hanging it up in the house because we barely even had money to go wash our clothes anymore because she just fell into this low
Mm-hmm.
where she couldn't pick herself up.
Mm-hmm.
Then there was the excessive drinking. Then there was the men in and out, and things like my mom was married 3 times. She dealt with men in between. My mom had dealt with a woman when I was growing up, and back then I was young. I didn't understand what was going on. I was like, my mommy went from being married to a man, and now she has a girlfriend, and now how am I going to go to school and tell my friends that my mommy got a girlfriend? So I just went through all of these things growing up that I was trying to make sense of. I just knew that my mom, and how I told myself then, was just she's not normal, quote unquote. And I don't know how to fix her. I remember trying to do things to try to make her happy. Like if I keep getting good grades, that'll make you happy. But my mom kind of had it. It was like that's not an expectation. Like I expect you to do X, Y, Z. You're gonna read. Like I made a video on YouTube. It's one of the first videos I made years ago where I talked about how I felt like I grew up in a cult because my mom wasn't really. She was afraid of the world. One of her anxieties was the world in itself. So it was no going outside with like my friends. There is no like we weren't allowed to watch cable TV. We weren't allowed to listen to FM radio. Like my mom would have like the scriptures of the books of the Bible on the wall and scriptures, and we had to like memorize them. And it was just really weird for like a short period of our life where it's like we were isolated from like family friends. Like we weren't allowed to. I'm born and raised in DC, but there were certain family members if they lived in certain parts of DC, it's like no, we're not going over there. So it was like I lost a sense of like my other family. So it's like it became a norm for me to know how to seclude myself. So as I got older, I learned how to shut myself off from people or from situations because that's what I saw my mom do to us and to herself. So it's nothing for me to cut you off or shut you out. But I had to realize that as I grew older, that is not healthy. It's
Mhm.
not healthy at all. So
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that, Aisha. Like, you know how a lot of times people think it's a flex to cut people off without
Mm-mm.
warning.
mm-hmm.
Like, and it's like they were like, "Oh, I'm too grown to be explaining to you what you did to me." And but it's like you don't even get or like you already knew what you did to me, but people again, that's why people need to read the four agreements and stop taking everything so personal. But one of the agreements is to not take things personal because a lot of times it really has nothing to do with you.
Mm-hmm.
It has everything to do with the person. Like that person, we're all like in our own movies and we just happen to interact with each other while
Yep.
we're in our own movies. And so I think I'm so glad that you said that because it's important for us to communicate to people when they have wronged us or when they did something that made us feel some type of way. And now, if that person choose that they want to continue to overstep that boundary, then it's up for us to be like, okay, well, I had the conversation with them, and they're not the best fit for my mental health. And so then you can be like, okay, make that decision. But to just cut somebody off without warning is, a lot of times for some people, is a trauma response, because it's like, oh, I need to try to protect myself. And I just kind of wanted to speak to that because I'm so happy you said that.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is you tell yourself like, "Oh, I cut that person off," but the reality of it is you still obsessively think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like you on the outside of it, you act like you don't care. You act like, but every like you still sometimes think like that person hurt me or this situation, and you say it to everybody else. I don't care about them or I'm over that situation. If
No,
some
you're not.
people are willing to be honest, no, you're not. You sit and repeat that situation or replay it over and over again until you may get over it eventually.
Right.
But like now, it's not as easy as people say. It's a definite trauma response.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Tell us about, I guess, your experience when you first started noticing some mental health symptoms personally. I know
Mhm.
myself when I was in high school, or grade school, I was also a high achiever, and that was kind of like my way of distracting myself from what was, occurring in my life. When did you start noticing any mental health symptoms personally?
Um, I would say not until I went to college. Once I went to college, that's when I started to. I always felt when I first got to Hampton that I wasn't like I didn't fit in. I came from Southeast DC. I came from a family who had no money to get me to college. Like my counselors came together and was like, "We're gonna find a way to get you out of here." So I had a really good school support team, but on the family end, it's like I looked at what I had, I looked at everybody else, and I'm like, I don't belong here. Like when I went to away to college, guys, no lie, I went to Family Dollar to get my stuff for my dorm room. I didn't know. I was just so excited to get accepted to college and to go. I was like, I bought Care Bear sheets. I bought a Care Bear pillow. I still remember. I didn't know nothing about no caddies or anything like this. I just was ready to go. I bought some snacks, some sheets, whatever. But when I got there, I saw how people like reacted. Like, I don't know if you experienced, you go to college and everybody looks at the dorms like, oh, let's go see your rooms. And then they came to my room and it was just like, whose side is that? And I think that was one of the first moments that I felt like is what insecurity feels like.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
So I was like, I've always known that I didn't have what other people have, but to have a moment where I was truly excited about just be shut down because of what someone said about me. And it's like I had already had to deal with that growing up anyway, but I thought going away to college was my chance to start over and get away from that. So when it happened, it was just like a reminder of like, no matter what you do, you're never going to be this. You're never going to fit into that circle. Just because you go to Hampton don't mean they'll ever accept you or you'll fit in. And that's what I started telling myself. So then I created this persona where I started acting out. I was like, well, I was such a sweet person, and I still am now that I'm older, but I was like really sweet. Oh, I just wanted to make friends with everyone. And I felt like every time I would try to search for that embrace, especially with women, it was always like counterfeit with negativity or like aggression. And I felt like, okay, so if that's what I'm going to keep getting from women, then that's what I'm going to start to give, because I felt as though it started with my mother. I had an insecurity of building relationships with women because the one woman that I had that I felt was supposed to be the foundation of that was very like tyrant. It was very physical and emotional and verbal abuse. So it's like I tried to get past this whole idea of like women are not to be trusted. Women will hurt you. Women are XYZ. So I go to college and it's women who put me down. It's women who made me feel like. So then I was like, okay, then I turned into like this angry, like always ready to fight, always on edge. Deep down inside, that's not who I am. But because you guys want to keep hurting me and attacking me verbally or XYZ, now I'm going to give you what you want. But deep down inside, I felt like I was two different people. This isn't who I want to be, and this isn't how I am. So I would say fast forward when I graduated from college, I came home, went to grad school, and I just thought I did the right thing, right? Back then, everything was like, go to college, do this, you'll have an amazing life. And so I'm like, I went to college twice. I'm $100,000 in debt. And yet when I graduated, I couldn't really get a job that I wanted. And it was primarily because I had my oldest daughter in college. And so it's like, oh, internships, I can't do that now because I have a baby. So I decided, I was like, I'm going to use my body. I was like, everybody, this is when the whole everybody want to be a internet model and everything else. I said I'm gonna do the same thing. So I went out here and I just started dancing. I that's around the time I called myself doing like radio hosting and promoting parties, and I'm in videos, and I mean I completely forgot all morals. I started drinking excessively and heavily. I started experimenting with different drugs, like nothing hard, but it was more so like I was smoking weed all the time high. I would do ecstasy just so I can make it through the night. I'm drunk all the time. And then I realized I was slowly drifting away from the person that I was. And I was becoming this person that people started to accept. Everybody loved China. That was the name I went by. She's the party girl. She get drunk. She's going to be the one on the bar, on the tables, or whatever the case may be. And so I started not to like my old self, the good girl who tried to always do everything right. I don't want to be her anymore because this version of me is fun and this version of me is getting attention and acceptance. So I want to stay this way. So I kept that going for years almost. Um, and then I realized that it was something I couldn't keep up anymore because it was affecting my relationship. So I was like, here I am. I've been out here trying to get the world to accept me, that I forgot that I'm a mom. Like at home, I have a young daughter who's going to grow up one day and see these things. I had a spouse at the time who was trying their best to support me, but it was kind of like, how can I have you as my girlfriend and the mother of my child, and you just out here? Like you're out here in these videos, you're doing this and you're doing that, you're never home. And so it caused a rift in my relationship where there was some infidelities that started happening, and I blamed myself for that. So it was like I am always used to saying something's my fault. My mother couldn't love me, it was my fault. I got a seal or something on my report card, she got angry, it's my fault. So I this insecurity just kept brewing. It's something wrong with me. Women don't like me for a reason, so it's something wrong with me. My mother didn't like me for a reason, it's something wrong with me. College went it. So it's like I created this negativity that it's me. So I would say back in about 2016, 2017, after this just cycle of went on in my head, I got out of the whole dancing and all of that. And I was like, okay, Ayanla, come fix Aisha's life. Okay.
Mhm.
So I was like, I'm going to get myself together. I'm going to like try to get on this straight and narrow path. So I started teaching. So this was like the first year I got into, no, this was probably like about year 3 of me being into teaching. So at this point, I thought I was telling myself I'm in a good mental space. But that's when I realized I started shutting out the world because I was like, I'm not that person anymore. And if you don't like the fact that I'm not out here drinking and smoking and dancing on bars and belly shots and stuff like that, then you don't need to be in my life. And what I realized was I lost 90% of the people who acted like they quote unquote liked me. So I fell into a deeper depression. I got people I went to college with looking down on me because they're like, oh, you went to Hampton and you did this and this is what you did with your life. Like I've had people who stopped speaking to me because of the quote unquote lifestyle I chose. I would go to work and I'm miserable. So what I realized I had started doing was the drinking became like bad. I was buying mini shot bottles and I had them in my purse at work. There were mini shot bottles in my glove compartment. There were mini shot bottles around my house. And I just felt like it needed to be somewhere where I can reach it because I'm just tired of feeling the way I feel. And nothing was taking away that pain except these little mini bottles and the fact that I can go somewhere and reach for one of them and they're there. And one weekend, I just couldn't take it anymore. I wrote my daughter a letter, and she probably was only, I know she was really young at the time, maybe about 6. Um, I wrote my daughter a letter. I had one of my brothers living with me at the time. I wrote him a letter. I wrote my girl's dad, my ex. I wrote him a letter, and it was just talking about how just life. You guys are gonna hate me for this. I can't live anymore. I don't want to feel this pain. It was just so much going on in my life at the time. I didn't have love because me and my ex were in this bad place. I felt like I didn't have acceptance because nobody likes the new Aisha that's a teacher and trying to get my life together. Everybody wants China back. I don't have a relationship with my mom anymore, and that will take a whole nother interview because I kind of pushed her out. So it's like I try to act like I'm not lonely, but now I'm lonely inside and I'm trapped inside my thoughts. And this whole negative, limiting beliefs that I've been telling myself, I don't know how to turn it off now. I just now feel like I am this horrible person and I don't deserve to be here. So I like locked myself. It was I planned it out. I went to CVS and tried to find sleeping pills, but they didn't have the ones I wanted. So I was like, I'm gonna go somewhere else. I found the brand of maximum strength sleeping pills I wanted. I bought a fifth of Hennessy. I like after I wrote the letters, I left them laying out in the room. I barricaded myself. Like I moved my nightstand by my door, locked the door, thinking no one can come in here. I sat in the middle of my floor. I turned on some music. I popped every single pill. I think it was a 12 pack. Popped every single pill and I just downed a bottle of Hennessy until I couldn't feel no nothing. I was like, I'm just gonna drink till I die. And that was the plan. I didn't want to wake up. I was just over life. So next thing I know, I just remember blacking out. And I woke up in an emergency room. Don't know how I got there. Don't know what happened. I just know I woke up in the emergency room. And my girl's dad told me the story later. It was like, he had to break down the door. I was there. He was like non responsive, not breathing. Ambulance was going to take too long. I threw you in the car, rushed you in. They had to like strap you down to he's telling me this whole story. And I remember the doctors coming in and asking me, did you attempt to commit a suicide? And I was like, no, I was just sleepy. And he was like, you was just sleepy. I was like, yeah, I was just sleepy. And he was like, so you took a whole pack of sleeping pills and your boyfriend saying he found an empty bottle of Hennessy. He was like, a fifth of Hennessy is a lot. And I was like, well, I just haven't been sleep. I just kept sticking to this lie of like, I just wanted to sleep. That's all it was. I just wanted to sleep. So the doctor was honest. He said, here's how it's going to work. You can either admit that you attempted a suicide and let us help you, and we'll put you on a 72-hour hold, or you can keep acting like this didn't happen. We're going to commit you and you'll stay for 14 days. I was like, okay, I'll just do these 3 days. And it's crazy because the 3 days that I was there, I felt worse than I did attempting to like kill myself, because then there was the guilt dangling over my head. It's like at first, guys, and you said you transparent on this show. When it first happened, I woke up in the emergency room. I was like, you can't even kill yourself, right? Like I literally burst out crying because I was like, how did you not even succeed? You took 12 pills and a fifth of Hennessy and you still here. You can't even do that right. And like I just went into this spiral. But I remember talking to the psychologist in one of the 3 days I was there. And at this point I was just crying. I was like, I want to go home. I was like, I realized what I did. Like, my life is worth more. Like, nothing in this world is worse than I was like, I just want to go home. And the lady was like, well, think about it. Had you succeeded in what you just tried to do, there would be no home right now. Everybody would be mourning what you just did. There would be no home. Do you realize that? And like, that's when it really hit me. Was like, God said, who told you that I was done with you? Like, no one gave you permission to try to take your own life. And so I need you to try to pull it together. So in that moment, the fact that I realized that I was still here after that, and the pain didn't instantly go away. It took me a minute to again like reframe the whole thought process that I gave myself. Was like, I was such a bad person that I didn't want to live anymore. And then I was an even worse person because I couldn't do it right. I had to change so much of that negativity thinking in order to heal. So
Whew.
I'm glad you're still here.
Yes. So glad you're still here. I'm just taking it all in. Wow, your story is just it's it's inspiring. But to also think that how we all had these low moments, and it took those low moments to kind of get us to where we are today.
hmm
But there are some people who end up dying from
yeah,
suicide, or there are people who still actually never reach. And this is not to say we still don't have moments of struggle, but
hmm
I'm saying there's people who still don't get to experience the joy that we get to experience, because they're still in that kind of space where it's just like, oh well, it's always going to be like this,
right.
or they don't try to get better for whatever reason. So the fact that you're still here is just amazing. And I'm just like almost speechless just listening to your story. But we want to definitely give you the opportunity to really talk about the work that you do with the Unstable One, your brand.
Yeah, so what I've done is I first started off by creating asynchronous models because I said maybe some people don't want to sit and talk to me one on one about it. Maybe they're just not there. So what I first did was I said, let me let people get to know me. So I created, like, guys, first of all, I am horrible with TikTok. I'm not a fan of social media. So
Mhm.
at first, one of the anxieties that I had was like posting my story. I was like, I'd rather sit and talk to people and do it that way versus posting it. But, my daughter and friends and everybody's like, Aisha, it's a new age, new time. You got to get on social media. So created social media accounts, and I was just like, you know what, I'm gonna tell my story and I'm gonna be honest. So I was just creating posts. It's nothing fancy, no fancy back. It was just like, this is something that happened, and let me tell you about it. So it's kind of like storytelling, and I got a lot of good positive feedback from that. Like people were like, please keep going. This has helped me, and I was just like, okay, so let me, take it a step further. So I started offering one-to-one sessions. So at first, when I got into business, I was like, okay, I'm gonna say, I'm trying to do life coaching. But when I thought about it and I looked more into it, I was like, this isn't really life coaching. Like, this is more so for me. It's like I am helping you, as you say. I really want to get to the bottom of what happened. I am helping you to recognize what those problems are through our conversations, through whatever process we decide to take. Like I have different road, like it's a package that we could do, like certain routes we could take to get to the source. It's like you have to be willing to do that work. A lot of people think that a life coach or counseling is someone who is going to spoon feed you all the steps and magic is going
Mhm.
to happen. It takes action on your part. So what I said first was, okay, I'm gonna create asynchronous models. So on my website, I have 4 courses that I created where it's basically I am talking you through as if you were taking an online course yourself. And it gets real in these videos. I said I want people to have a reason to say, I paid for this. What am I getting for my money? I'm walking you through what it actually means to recognize, reject, and reframe. I'm still using my story. There's moments in the teachings where I'm going to tell you, pause the video and write down XYZ. Like I tell you in the beginning, you need your paper, you need your pencil, and you need about an hour and 20 minutes to yourself, non interrupted, because I felt like some people might want to target this alone. So I wanted to be able to hit it from both angles. I want to be able to help women one on one. I'm going to do group coaching soon because I've had a lot of people reach out to me or women through like DMs to say, would you offer something for a group of women? So I'm like, okay, I want to be able to like offer group sessions soon, but it just won't be a free fall like we're in. It's like for topics. For
Mhm.
example, if you were sexually assaulted, you would come to this session because I want the women who have experienced that trauma to be able to be open. That means everybody in this circle, kind of like what you guys do, have had that particular experience. So this particular session is for us only, or what if or whatever it may be. So I think that I'm just want to keep that going in that direction. I'm going to create more asynchronous models, and I just want women to be able to take a time for yourself. Like you said, it's so cliche to do wellness Wednesdays and self care Sundays, but it's like, what if you actually had to sit down and do some real work? Like when the last time you took out a paper and some pencil for yourself? Like, so that's the level of help that I'm offering and looking to help to give people. Is like I want to actually sit down for an hour by myself and get to know me, and like sit back and just be like, oh, sugar honey iced tea, I didn't realize this, and like eventually be able to generalize that across your life.
Yeah. Um, One of the things just really wanted you to speak to is how can someone know if they should work with a life coach, which could be you, versus seeing a therapist? Because a lot of times, I think for some people, their life coach sounds it's like it can sound more trendy, and it's
Hmm.
like, oh, I'm like, oh, I got a life coach versus, oh, you got a therapist. So um how do you decide who is the right client to work for you, that for you to work with, versus being like, okay, this is outside of my scope of work, I want to encourage you to see a therapist?
So I think for me, I say, I made a joke on my website. I'm like, you a woman and you tired of them kids and they getting on your nerves, but you love them, or, like everyday women who deal with things that I'm trying to explain in a way that makes sense. Women who are willing to be transparent and honest. If you're saying like I feel like I want to commit a suicide, I can't help you with that, and I would direct you to a professional to help you with that. If you are having persistent depression, like it's been 2 weeks, I can't get out of bed, I'm not able to eat, things like that. I feel like that's where you go and see a professional. I can give you all the words to encourage you, to motivate you, but I can't get you out the bed. I can't help get to the source of what that problem is. But if you are saying, hey, I have this X, And for whatever reason, I can't get over them, or I keep going back to the same type of men over and over again. I'm noticing this pattern in my behavior, or this thing happened to me in the past. Like, for example, I always say my overachieving came because my mother never accepted failure. So in my life, as I got older, if I didn't do something right, I told myself I automatically failed. So people that are willing to make those types of connections, why do I always have an attitude? Why am I always easily irritated? Let's talk about those things that's triggering you to make you irritated. Let's talk about what you're telling yourself about why these things trigger. It's kind of like a session of just, why do you think? Let's go into this. How did that happen? And then it's the more I help you pull it out, it's like to put those dots together. So I hope I answered that question.
Mhm.
But for me, it's the people who can't realize things like, I don't love myself. And I know I don't love myself. I just don't know why. I know I keep letting this man, like I was talking to a young lady recently, and she was just expressing to me how she sleeps with different men because she's trying to fill this void like in her heart, that she's like, I don't know what else to do because I don't feel like I have nothing else left to give. Women who feel like that. If How do I see myself for my self-worth, as opposed to feeling like my body is all I can give, or being someone who feels like I am nothing but a wife. You forgot who you was outside of being a wife. I am nothing but a CEO. Who were you before you became a CEO, and why is that now the only thing you're attaching to yourself? So, just kind of those sort of things.
No, that definitely helps. Um, so before we go, well, I guess before we end the interview, what words of encouragement would you give others who feel as though their life isn't as stable as they would like it to be?
Your life will never probably be as stable as you want it to be. And that's why I call myself the unstable one. It's some days you're going to feel like I'm on top of the world. Everything is going the way I want it to go. And then later that day, you're upset and you don't know why you're mad. But you have to know that that's okay. Like, life might not be the way you want it to be, but we have to find the smallest things to be grateful for. Now, that is something people say is cliche too, like the gratitude journals and the things like that. But if you could take a moment to find even one thing to be grateful for out of your negative situation, the small steps is what counts. So I feel like, in one, embracing what you feel in this moment. Like right now, my life sucks. But what's something I could pull out of this that's going to lift me up and motivate me? And to really keep it in your mind is that you are not alone. A lot of my depression and my anxiety came because I felt like nobody understands how I feel. I can't tell nobody this. They're going to judge me. I can't tell my family this. They're going to think something's wrong, and this goes back to worrying about what people think. So I say all that to say, it's accept your situation for where it is, but it's all about reframing. It's all about reframing the way you look at things. And I don't care how small it is, find how, whatever you can, to pull out the good in any. What is that situation teaching you right now? How is that situation building your character right now? How is this situation going to be a part of your story later? Like, find something to pull out of that situation, no matter how small. That's the best way I could say it.
Thank you so much.
Yes, I'm so glad that you joined us. We actually met Iysha at the NAMI walk.
Mhm.
So we're so glad that we were able to connect with you and
Yes.
come talk with us today. Thank you so
Of
much.
course. I am happy. This was amazing for me too. Thank you guys for the opportunity. Thank your listeners. I'm happy to come back anytime. When I tell you I got stories for days, for days.
Okay, so before we actually move forward into the episode, we often talk about how language matters. And I'm not sure if Iysha knows this. So here on the podcast, we're really big on like language, and we actually refrain from using the word committed suicide. And so for some people, if you're new listening to the podcast, you may not know this. So the thing why, which I was actually educated on this by a psychiatrist, a lot of times when we use the word commit, it's usually like commit a crime or commit a sin in the sense of like wrongdoing. And when we're also saying to people, this person committed suicide, is it actually more so places blame on the individual versus the mental health condition that influenced the behaviors or the thoughts. And a lot of times, like if someone has cancer or diabetes, we're not going to say that they were committed to their death, because that kind of, it makes it seem like we have more compassion for people who have physical illnesses, because it's like, oh, cancer was the reason they died, or asthma was the reason they died, or stroke was the reason. But when it comes to a mental health condition, it's like, oh, you were the one that's kind of responsible for your death. And so that's why now a lot of people in the mental health space, they are really adamant about like changing it. And so, like, for instance, even with the name of the podcast, that's why we say die by or attempted suicide. And this education was imparted upon me, so I'm just sharing that education with anyone else who may be watching. That language matters. We never want people to feel like their attempt is their fault. And even though you can say like, well, yes, we were the one that did X, Y, and the Z, but it is the mental health condition, it is the depression or whatever else may be going on psychologically that influence the behavior, because a healthy person mentally is not going to want to end their life. So that's kind of the story behind language.
All right. So, for our spotlight, for every episode, we like to highlight someone who has either passed away by suicide or had an attempt and survived. And for today, we're going to highlight Simone Battle. She was an American singer, dancer, and actress. She was a finalist on The X Factor and was a member of the girl group G.R.L. She died by suicide on September 5th, 2014. And I actually remember when this happened. Um, so we just want to keep Simone, in our thoughts and honor her memory.
Yeah. For our resource segment, I'm excited about this one because it is an amazing childhood friend of mine. Courtney Anderson-Harvey was my next door neighbor growing up. Now she's a good old sis of mine. And she is now a licensed clinical social worker. And she has her own practice in New Jersey called a resting place counseling that focuses on helping others simply provide rest, which is super important. Restoration and renewed motivation to work to actually move forward in life. And again, you can check out Courtney Anderson Harvey. Her website is restingplacecounseling.com. And of course, all of the links or anything that we mentioned will be in the show notes or the description box on YouTube.
Yes, shout out to Courtney. So, for our community changemakers segment, we are going to highlight Pretty Brown Girl. It's an organization that empowers Black and Brown girls while encouraging self acceptance by cultivating social, emotional, and intellectual well being. So, definitely check out Pretty Brown Girl. We are all about being well overall here. Self acceptance. I think we're going to get into an episode eventually about like body image. So, definitely check them out.
Yes, yes,
Yes.
Pretty Brown Girls. Yes. So great organization. See, somebody just gave us the confirmation that they're great. My mentor is was the executive director and knows the founder of Pretty Brown Girls, and now they're in multiple states. Now they're in L.A. They were here in D.C. And so we would definitely encourage you to check it out if you need your young daughter, wants mentorship and really help with self-esteem, healthy communication skills, all of that. Check out prettybrowngirls.com. Self-care. So, what am I doing for self-care? Girl, I'm trying to figure out what do I need to do. For self-care, I need to I'm going to say actually not what I want to do. What I have been doing, I've been doing a great job at keeping up my bedtime.
Good job.
Girl.
Good
Yes.
job.
Do not disturb at 7:30. Kia wake up at 4 a.m. So I've been doing a really good job at actually like shutting down mainly Monday through Friday. The weekends I kind of be a little lax, but yeah.
Yeah, for my self care, I'm trying to make sure that I eat regular meals. That people are
Hmm.
probably gonna watch this episode and say, "Girl, you're overweight." But um,
We don't do that on here. And if I see anybody in the comments that say something, we coming.
yeah, I'm trying to make it a conscious effort because I will go through the day and I won't eat. I've been drinking enough water, thankfully, but
Yeah.
I'll get through the
You drink a
day. I
lot of
won't
water.
eat. I won't prioritize like stopping to take a break to make sure that I'm nourished to actually, do well.
Right.
So I'm trying to make sure that I stop, make sure I get a little something to eat, keep myself recharged. It's a challenge for me. My coworker is always like, "You're not going to eat," and I'm like, "No, I'm just going to eat when I get home." So I'm trying to stop doing that.
Yes, see, and I love that. You see, Jordan and I talked about for self care. We talked about eating and actually sleeping. We're not just talking about the manis and petties and the lace fronts and stuff. We want to talk about everyday practical things that you need. Like you need rest to function properly. You need to eat. And I know you said like. Leon, let's give Jordan some claps because Jordan lost 40 pounds in a year. Okay. So we not about to come from my friend talk about she overweight. No, you yes. Okay. So we gonna give props where props are due. So I'm very proud of Jordan and all that she's doing.
Thank you. I appreciate you and Aisha for the encouragement. So, for our moment of inspiration, we just want to encourage people, like Aisha said, to really um, shift the way you think about your darkest moments. And there's a quote: "Life is not happening to you, it's happening for you." So, life events can either drive us to make positive changes or keep us in a dark space. And we want to encourage people to, reframe the way we think about our traumas and our hurt and really find strength in those moments because, like Aisha said, oftentimes there's a lesson in it. And, we're all about trying to teach people to think positively and
Yeah, I love that you said that. I think about losing my sister. I'm about to come up on the 2 year anniversary in
yeah.
2 weeks. Life was taken tragically in a car accident. And that's the hardest thing that I'm still working through to this day. She was only 29 when she died. And I think what I've learned from that is I've always been intentional, but I feel like I've been even more intentional about doing things that make me happy and not doing things that don't make me happy and enjoying life to the fullest and getting life insurance because she didn't have life insurance. So that's a tragic thing that I'm still working through and that I struggle with. But again, I still learned something from that experience.
Yes. So we want to thank you guys for tuning in to another episode. Make sure you leave us a comment if you're watching, listening. If any of this resonated with you, we would love to hear from you. And we'll see you guys next time.
And I gotta say also, if y'all listen on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, I need y'all to give us lots of stars because
Oh, yeah.
when you give stars on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or any of those platforms or you comment, it actually push Black People Die by Suicide to actually push us further up the algorithm. So please continue to do that. If you're watching on YouTube, as Jordan mentioned, comment, but also share the episode, text it to your homegirl, your coworker. We really want to make sure that this podcast continues to grow and reach the people that it needs to reach. So we'll catch y'all on the next episode. This episode was sponsored by the Mental Health Empowerment Agency, where its mission is to dismantle the mental health stigma and raise awareness of suicide prevention through curated events, individual and group peer support, digital and social media, and educational trainings.